Dragon Quest is often associated with grinding. Just the other day, some guy in my comments was talking about how it's a shame that Dragon Quest is so much grind heavier than other RPGs. And here on YouTube, some of the most viewed videos, some of the first ones that come up if you look up Dragon Quest III HD, are guides on how to best farm. Well, but what if you just don't? This is Dragon Quest III HD without random encounters. And to achieve this, I disabled random encounters using Cheat Engine. I linked the table below. I'm going to do this playthrough on the normal Dragon Quest difficulty, and I'm not allowing elevating shoes since farming EXP by walking around town is counterintuitive to what I'm trying to prove here. But those are all the rules I have for now. As you might be able to tell, one thing that I didn't restrict were classes, so building my party was fairly straightforward. At least 2 monster wranglers were basically forced because they deal damage independently from your level. They instead scale with how many monsters you've recruited, meaning they are the best damage dealers for any playthrough that limits EXP in some way. The last party member was a little complex. I wanted a mage or sage for the last stretch after you get the duplicate, and priest into mage was another choice worth considering since snooze was the only priest spell I was interested in. But in that case the agility would have suffered a bit. So instead I ended up going for thief into sage, where my original plan was to free up the meteorite bracer, but I ended up using it on my sage for the entire thing anyways. Thief did make the early sections a bit easier though because of the higher agility. And on that note, my personalities were pretty boring. I got a Paragon hero and bat out of hell on everyone else. A Paragon hero makes the early game so much easier, even at low levels. In my opinion, it's well worth the worst late game performance. Even if of course it shines less here than it usually does. As for why I used bat out of hell on everyone else, well, agility is the only stat that will matter in this playthrough. And the first example of this can be seen in the very first encounter. Not Robin Hood, but all the way in the pyramid. Not the Ripper of the Rift, but instead a canny box. I've collected all the monsters in the area to power up my wranglers, but the way monster wranglers work is a bit counterintuitive. You need to actually finish one encounter before they learn the new abilities that they learn depending on the amount of monsters wrangled. So after 10 monsters they learn Monster Pylon, but only after 10 monsters and after finishing one encounter, and this is where the canny box comes into play. Getting there isn't all that big a deal since there are no random encounters and all that, but once I'm there I can't just overpower it at level 1. It's never going to be reliable, but there are still ways to prepare. I gathered all the strength seeds in the area and the steel broadsword from the waterfall cave, which will allow my hero to do decent damage, and thanks to the meteorite bracer as well as the skull ring that you find at the top floor of Skyfell Tower, my thief is able to outspeed. And scattered on the ground, seemingly at random, you can find a surprising amount of Coagulant, an item that confuses an enemy when used, and it just so happens that canny boxes are only 30% resistant to it. Do you see where I'm going? A confused canny box in itself is still a bit dangerous, but nowhere near impossible. So after only a couple of attempts I got past it with both the hero as well as one of the monster wranglers alive and gaining 606 EXP each, thus going to level 6. The wrangler learned Monster Pylon, and from there beating a second canny box was quite simple. This time everyone survived and gained 303 EXP. So now I have 2 wranglers with Monster Pylon, in other words I'm more than ready for Robin Hood. Usually I talk about all the equipment and where I got it, but I didn't have to bother yet except for an edge boomerang that I bought for the hero. Having defeated 2 canny boxes means my level is basically alright, and gear I just happened to incidentally pick up along the way is just as good as what you're meant to have at this point. I used Coagulant on Robin Hood with my thief while my hero did regular attacks and the wranglers used Monster Pylon. But besides that, nothing spectacular happened here. Well, nothing spectacular besides Monster Pylon putting out spectacular numbers, since right now it's just as strong as it's going to be against the Ripper of the Rift. And had I died here, that wouldn't have been a problem anyway, since this remake gives the option to restart boss fights from the beginning, something that will make even the least reliable boss fights in this playthrough much more bearable. But ultimately nobody died in this fight, meaning 857 EXP go to everyone, and without any further prep work the Ripper of the Rift is next. and Coagulant works on him as well. It's really the MVP early on, but I did run out and then used the snooze stick from the waterfall cave for the rest of the fight, while the other 3 party members did as much damage as possible. Thanks to stuns, there really isn't a need for a healer. Imagine just how hard this would be without my thief. The hero did die on the last turn, but that just means everyone else gets a bit more EXP, 6040 to be exact. This opens up Ortega, which in turn opens up the All Trades region, including Myr, where you can get Ortega's helmet and buy some decent gear. I can pick up all the treasure without having to worry about random encounters, so money is absolutely no problem. The Gusterwang bought in the All Trades Abbey is still worth mentioning. Also, I am still gathering as many monsters as I physically can, and with that, all that stands between us and open water is an easy fight against 4 Robin Hood, which gives 1244 EXP to each party member, and then the Robin Hood rematch. And I'd love to say that it's any different from the first, but it really isn't. Everyone survived and gained 3333 EXP. And now the run opens up quite a bit and routing becomes interesting. The first thing I did was visit every area, recruit not all but most of the monsters, get some decent equipment like an Agile Gillet from the top of the 5 Spire, and then the first boss I beat was of course Orochi. A boss so easy that it's become infamous, gaining me 5300 EXP in the first encounter and 14,700 in the second. My strategy was still to just spam status effects with my thief, and even the hero joined in with snooze, while my wranglers were spamming monster pile on. My thief hit level 20, reclassed to Sage, and here's what my party's stats looked like. This is 1 orb down. The red and yellow ones don't require a fight, so I will also skip over those, meaning 3 are left and the others are all locked behind fights that are pretty difficult. This means the choice on who to fight next was a little nuanced. I decided to fight the boss Tro next, since it gives a lot of EXP. And for this fight I again let the hero, who thanks to being a paragon goes dead last guaranteed, as well as my level 1 Sage, cast snooze every turn. The Sage still threw a snooze staff, while the monster wranglers used monster pile on. And it's definitely possible that I'm beginning to sound like a broken record here. The boss troll has tons of HP and can crit, but my wranglers both barely survive a hit, and I got lucky enough to not get crit. Meanwhile, my Sage and hero weren't so lucky. My wranglers survived the fight and both gained 43,600 EXP, making them each go up to level 24. This took me like 3 retries, but that was all. Next I fought the Dying Fires. A fight that only becomes difficult if your damage output is low. All the enemies in this fight can call in more, which in turn can call in even more, which on one hand allows you to farm EXP here if you really want to, but it also means that high amounts of damage output exponentially speed up this fight. And Monster Pylon is a pretty good damage source. Everyone was alive for this, but I only got 3282 EXP since I didn't allow many add-ons to spawn. This was the first fight my Sage survived alongside the rest of the party, so she's finally moved on past level 1. Since I'm not restarting to have everyone alive at the end of each boss fight, that means there's a realistic chance of a party member getting stuck at level 1, meaning they keep dying, which results in them staying stuck at level 1. So I'm glad I got my Sage to break out of the cycle, and from here on I won't reclass anyone else, so I can already move on to Garboil at this point. A boss with a very interesting exploit that not a lot of people know about. Its MP pool is very limited, and thanks to Keklang, a spell that renders your party invincible, you can easily wait it out. Afterwards he becomes borderline harmless. I still managed to lose 2 party members, but the alive party members were a Wrangler and more importantly the Sage, meaning both of them got 48,600 EXP and my Sage even went up to level 21. It was also this fight where I remembered that my Wranglers both learned Wild Sight, an ability that allows you to act twice for a few actions. It's a bit of extra damage, so always nice to have. And at this point I want to mention that reclassing my Wranglers would be better. They'd have better stats basically after one fight, and they won't use any of their other abilities they learn. The only reason I'm not reclassing is to lower my power level. At this point I also stopped using seeds and was thinking about increasing the difficulty to Draconian, more on that in a bit. But back to the story, the last boss fight before all the other orbs are up for grabs is the Chiromancer at the end of Gaia's Navel. You need to solo the guy and my hero just isn't strong enough. Luckily, you don't need to use the hero here and can instead use a monster wrangler. And in only 3 turns I can mow the Chiromancer down thanks to Monster Pile-On. This results in 7720 EXP on one of my wranglers, and that is the last fight before Barrow-Mows. None of the other orbs require fighting to get. So I can hatch Ramia, get the duplicate which allows my Sage to double cast spells for the rest of this playthrough, some extra monsters to further increase the Monster Pile-On damage, and then it's already time for Barrow-Mows. He only has a 20% resistance to sleep, so while I might not have any good healing spells, I can still try to stun him enough to where he's not able to wear down my HP before I can beat him. This means my hero who is guaranteed to go dead last as well as my Sage that is guaranteed to go before Barrow-Mows will both try to put him to sleep. If my Sage lands a snooze, which is a pretty good chance since she gets to cast it twice, then Barrow-Mows loses his action that turn, and if the hero hits his snooze, that frees up the Sage's action next turn. Thanks to quick retries, I was able to just throw attempts at him, and thanks to my very clear win condition, just as long as I kept hitting snooze, this fight ended up being a matter of inevitability. Nobody died, meaning everybody gained 25,600 EXP from this. So with that, my party defeated the Archfiend and saved the kingdom of Eliahan. No, the whole world. Well, of course not. It's revealed that Zoma is behind everything and the next stop is the world down below. And thankfully there's only one encounter before Zoma's Citadel, so before I fight anything else I'm able to gather basically any gear I want. For example the hero's shield, and I can wrangle a whole bunch of monsters. This is the part that gets much easier thanks to no random encounters. But then it's already time for the first boss around here. Barrow-Mows again. Or rather his brother, or on the localization his soul. I don't really know why they made that change. All I know is that I'm getting sick of this guy already. I sure hope I don't have to fight Barrow-Mows 2 more times, eh? But it's not exactly the same either way. This time I can simply stunlock him, not only because his resistance to sleep jumped from 20 to an incredible 30%, I don't know why the .org wiki claims it's around 50%, a wiki really shouldn't just make up numbers, but it's also because he's got company. The Archdemon reskins will cast Kabuff on the first turn, which is completely irrelevant, and means I can and have to start the fight off aggressively. The goal is to first kill the ads. For that I have to pray that Monster Pile-On hits him as much as possible, and then I can stunlock Barrow-Mows too, even despite his slightly higher resistance. All party members survived and gained 15,055 EXP. The Rainstaff as well as the Sunstone can be found without any fights, meaning that nothing stands between us and creating the Rainbow Drop and crossing over to Zoma's Citadel. A dungeon with one encounter against a few enemies. A fight that basically comes down to RNG and what the enemies decide to do, whether they kill or stun my Wranglers or turn 1, which enemy gets taken out by Monster Pile-On, etc. But overall it's nothing too deep. On my second attempt, everyone survived and gained 4,177 EXP. At least it's nothing as deep as the scene that follows, but I'm not here today to talk about the story. And then the last obstacle in this game is a boss rush. The first fight is against the King Hydra, and a Watchy reskin that has rather little in common with the original. It can use an ability that blocks all spells for a couple of turns, and it can wipe out my party in a couple of actions, but it has a 0% resistance to confusion and only 30% to sleep. My Sage hadn't learned Fuddle yet, so I still opted to go for Snooze. I ended up getting it on my first attempt where nobody died and each party member earned 24,400 EXP. The second boss in this boss rush is a rematch against the Soul of Barrow-Mows, but this time it doesn't have any add-ons, meaning despite it being the enhanced version, it still only has a 30% sleep resistance and ends up being easier than the first encounter. Its HP was increased from 4300 to 6100, and if it ever got to act, it would be even deadlier than the first encounter. But this is nothing that seriously threatens this run. Everyone gets 27,000 points of experience, and even my levels are starting to look quite alright now. I'm really blowing through these bosses without much trouble. At this point I really should have done this playthrough on a higher difficulty. Anyways, the last boss that stands between my party and Zoma is the final rematch against Barrow-Mose, now in the form of the Bones of Barrow-Mose. And this fight is a bit problematic. Unlike all the bosses up until now, it's immune to confusion as well as sleep, meaning I can't cheese it the way I cheesed all those other fights. The guy regenerates a massive 300 plus HP every turn and he attacks 2 to 3 times. Each of those attacks being a single target attack that will one-shot one of my party members. And at this point the level deficit was really starting to show itself. I just couldn't get past this guy. He killed me almost immediately and my damage output was barely enough to put a dent into his passive healing. This fight is always a bit problematic, but I've gotten so far. Is this really it? Is this my limit? The fact that I was able to get here is already unbelievable. And I believe even if I can't get past this fight, I was already able to show off something of substance. And to be honest, I think it's already more than what's to be expected of a video about Dragon Quest. Also, I don't think I really need to beat this fight since you've already watched this much of this video. The actual quality somewhere around the middle stops mattering. You're probably listening to this in the background while your phone is out of reach and you couldn't stop watching if you wanted. You know how many YouTube videos start with 30 seconds of the most hyperactive editing you will ever see and then they slow down to the actual pace? All of that just to please the algorithm. And at this point, even if I managed to disappoint you immensely, you watched the first 30 seconds of this. So what does it matter if the rest of this video is trash? Look at other Dragon Quest content. Specifically I want to talk about the most viewed Dragon Quest YouTuber right now. The best one according to YouTube. It's this guy named Aquano. And I have nothing against the guy, I don't know him. But I find his videos quite fascinating. He makes guides, but he doesn't seem to have finished the game even once before he started making guides. There is no way he experimented with all the classes and is even beginning to understand the game at a deep level. And he makes blatant mistakes in all of his videos. For example, he thinks sages learn extra spells that mages or priests don't.
It learns every spell the priest and the mage learn, plus extra ones. It's just crazy.
You can argue, maybe he doesn't script his videos. These sorts of mistakes happen. Nobody can perfectly remember all of this stuff. And first of all, I could. Second, when he's unsure, he could and should do what everyone else does and say that he doesn't know. Third, he could edit it out. And lastly, why doesn't he script his videos? There is nothing forcing him to wing it. He doesn't stream these, and they're not meant to be a reaction or his honest feelings, you know, him authentically speaking from the heart. These videos are guides. They're meant to teach people how to play. The only reason to not script them and to not fact check and to not research whatever you said and maybe cut that section out in post is because you don't care. And it's not like these are videos that are only popular because they're presented in such an incredibly professional way. This isn't form over substance since the form is not that great. He doesn't blur out the footage in the background while he's showing some graphics. The videos have so many editing mistakes and he doesn't seem to know the difference between noise reduction and a noise gate. A noise gate means that whenever it's somewhat quiet and there's only background noise, that noise gets deleted. But that means the background noise keeps popping up whenever he talks.
Dragon Quest III HD 2D Remake.
The only reason to use a noise gate over noise reduction, which removes all background noise, is when you don't actually want to edit anything in post. Like while you're streaming, you could literally get this result by opening up OBS, adding a compressor and a noise gate and then speaking into your mic. I'm not saying he's too lazy to do anything in post, but that accusation would be hard to deny. So these videos suck in form, they suck in function, but ultimately YouTube doesn't care about that. The people that don't know anything about a game don't care about the quality of the guide they're watching, because they can't judge it for themselves, and there's this inherent trust that someone putting out guides has to have some clue about the subject matter. And when there are no other guides out there on day one, it also doesn't matter how bad the audio or the editing is. That is because you just can't make a quality product on day one, and you can't make a quality product every 2 days either. Feeding the algorithm with translations of other guides, content that is produced in the same amount of time that it takes to watch, that you could literally stream, and of course using stolen thumbnails, that just works, and it works better than anything I'm trying to put into my videos. Honestly, why do I bother making thumbnails? Whenever I make a video, I try to design a thumbnail that in some way adds to the video, or one that's just funny to me, like this one where Tonekotaloon snorts a massive line of coke. And I know I'm bad at designing thumbnails. I'd do much better if I copied a thumbnail idea from David. You know, a female character on one side, the game's logo as well as some words about the video on the other, and a horizontal gradient overlay in the background. Why put in any thought? I'm serious, I'll copy a thumbnail from David for this video. How many of you even noticed? You know what advice small YouTubers tend to get? It's always to steal. To steal from other people in your niche, anyone with more views, because they must already have stolen from someone who stole from someone who once knew what they were doing. Even YouTube Studio itself has an inbuilt tab for inspirations where you're meant to look at videos to copy from. And getting inspired by itself is nothing bad. I'm not trying to say that. I think we can all learn from one another. But even YouTube is telling me to stop caring and to make lots of clickable, substanceless content that just barely has enough quality to be bearable. And that's just not a pill that goes down easy. It seems to still be a 50-50 whether a video of mine gets picked up by the algorithm. But besides that, the individual quality doesn't seem to matter. The video that in my eyes is subjectively the best I ever made is sitting at like 200 views. And for months, the only comment on that one was someone saying that they don't usually click on videos with 1 view, but they were positively surprised. Do you know how much that stings? This is way worse than hearing that your video is garbage and that's why nobody watches it. And I knew that video was not going to do well, even before I started working on it. More important than what you make is what you make it about. Nobody cares about Dragon Quest 7 and the audience for Dragon Quest 7 story analysis is non-existing. I made that video because I cared. But what does integrity matter when nobody sees it? Can anyone really believe me when I say that I care more about the quality of my product than I do about views? At the end of the day, I'm uploading and quality is just one way to try and get attention. Right? A YouTuber's success can be measured in subscribers, in views, and even if you want to make the argument about quality, you can measure that in likes. My videos get less likes than Aquanos and are therefore worse, right? And I know I'm pretentious talking about the quality of my videos, like the one about religion in Dragon Quest 7. To be clear, compared to the stuff you commonly see in other corners of the internet, it's unwatchable garbage that I'm putting out here. But compared to other Dragon Quest content, like Aquanos, I'd say it more than measures up. But I'm in the minority here. Look at the comments under his videos, they seem to love it. So who am I to put my content above his? That would be insanely arrogant. Everything considered, my channel is not a success, and therefore it's a failure. Aquano gets comments telling him that his videos are good, I get comments asking me why I don't have more views. You've been watching footage in the background from a solo playthrough on Draconian that I did a while back. A better YouTuber would probably have made a video about that titled "Can you beat Dragon Quest 3 HD without a party?" And that probably would have garnered much more attention than this video. I wouldn't even have formulated this title as a question if it weren't for someone literally telling me that they thought this one would be impossible. But I didn't feel that that playthrough was worthy of being made into a video. I always feel insulted personally when I see a video with titles like these. Man, I hate that sort of content. So why would I want to create it? I don't advertise my own videos, I don't spam links in any forums, and I don't even ask for like, comment and subscribe. because I'm just not unscrupulous enough to objectively worsen the quality of my videos to artificially increase my viewership. That's not a compromise I'm willing to make, but on the other hand, that just means I'm not fit for YouTube. I'm a terrible YouTuber, and as such I don't owe it to anyone to finish this playthrough. Even if I was a great YouTuber, what would the consequence of me not finishing this playthrough and saying, maybe it's possible, I just couldn't do it myself, be? I already got your view, I already got your watch time. What are you gonna do about it? Dislike? YouTube dislikes are beneficial if anything. You know how many YouTubers straight up get cancelled and just keep making videos like nothing happened? But even so, 90% of you don't even care or pay attention. I could literally lie in your face and you wouldn't notice. In other videos I always gave 110% for maximum quality and authenticity. But did you even notice that I just didn't have the footage for the Orochi fight? My OBS froze and I didn't go back to re-record it. In my old videos I would have gladly played 2 extra hours for a few second long clip, but most people won't even notice. Did you notice that when I showed the stats after Orochi, the EXP didn't add up? I accidentally clicked on a candy box in Gaia's navel and also don't have a recording of that. So the hero gained 1212 EXP there. But how many of you would even have noticed? Do you even care that I'm looping the exact same song in the background? I also just straight up cheated. I enabled a cheat that makes stat seeds always give the maximum amount because I felt like that's something you could theoretically just reset for. Which was way overkill by the way, the whole playthrough was so extremely easy. At this point it's not me trying to obscure something from you, it's just me messing with you of course. But I do feel as if too many YouTubers insult their viewers' intelligence. And by that I mean, I'm not even stuck on the bones of Baromos. I literally had to throw an attempt for the background footage of my party dying and I only have one clip. Of course I can just run it out of MP by spamming Keklang and then the fight is trivial. And so is the rest of this run. Zoma has a 0% resistance to sleep. And on the topic, Aquano made a 20+ minute guide on how to beat Zoma. Uploaded it while I was working on this one where he recommends sickening levels, awful strats, and throughout the whole thing he doesn't even mention that Zoma has no resistance to sleep. He just says that he can be put to sleep and kinda mentions it without putting reasonable emphasis on how a single party member just shuts Zoma down completely. It's his Achilles heel and he only glances at it. He didn't look up the status resistances cause he couldn't be bothered. And he couldn't even be bothered to make the video fun, like he didn't even mention that heal spells that get bounced onto Zoma damage him instead of healing. He literally beat Zoma for the first time. You can see how he makes progress throughout his videos. He finished the game for the first time and immediately felt qualified to make a guide to help people with his expertise from casually playing the game once. He is the person that is not only making the most viewed guides, he's the person making the consistently most viewed Dragon Quest content on YouTube right now. It's not GC, it's not Mr. Gentleman. This insane collaboration is sitting at 1200 views, which is criminal. It's not a single one of all these amazing people in the community that put their heart into their work. It's the guy that just makes stuff up when he doesn't have any idea what he's talking about, which tends to happen a lot. It's the guy that can't even be bothered to spell Dragon Quest correctly. Are you for real? You know what? If that's what being a good YouTuber means, then I don't wanna be a good YouTuber. I'd much rather be this terrible small failure of a creator that nobody watches. Here's the final stats for this playthrough. I do think this run could be done on Draconian, even without seeds. As you might notice, I stopped upgrading gear. I stopped going out of my way for monsters and this one took only a little over 7 hours. With a little more effort you can get a lot better results and I do believe that they'd be enough for a way harder challenge. I was contemplating not even uploading this video to be honest, because the challenge wasn't adequate. I overestimated the game by a lot. But while I won't say that there's no way I'm ever going to do an altered version of this challenge, for example without monster wranglers, I did end up thinking to myself, what would Aquano do, and decided to upload this anyways. I of course don't know anything about Aquano, never spoke to him once, If anything, I'm glad someone's making Dragon Quest content. I really don't blame Aquano for making videos in his style. I hate the environment that forces these sorts of videos, and in a sense I think he's representative of everything wrong with YouTube in my eyes. And honestly, a microscopic YouTuber like me saying that his videos are bad, which is fairly blatant, hopefully won't hurt him. Especially since he'll probably move on to another game pretty soon. Most of that section just now was played up. You know how all those other challenge ones that YouTube tells me to be inspired by have this one section where they pretend to hit an impossible to overcome challenge? My idea when I noticed that this one was way too easy for me to make a video out of was to do one of those sections, except it's really forced and just keeps escalating into more and more self-doubt until it starts getting a little real. I basically built a Trojan horse here and force you to watch me whine about Aquano. But on a more positive note, I am truly grateful for all the 5 people that actually watch my videos. I'm even ecstatic about getting almost no views, just as long as I don't have completely dead videos like when I did the Dragon Quest 7 series. Dragon Quest is subculture, at least here in the West. Anybody who makes content about these games knows that they'd have much more success making it about something popular. Dragon Quest creators, me included, do it out of passion. I think to an extent Aquano is the most viewed Dragon Quest YouTuber right now because unlike the people that create more hedonistic videos, his have a much more tangible purpose. They're trying to fill a very real hole, that being a lack of good information. The English wikis are garbage. One is a fandom wiki that has its own share of problems and the other one is run by a crazy person. It's become totally normal to Google Translate the Japanese wikis in this community, but that's just not what comes up when somebody new to the series Googles Dragon Quest. Yuji Horii recently tweeted about teaching others how to play Dragon Quest, but for the Western community, who is teaching the vast majority of new players? Is that really going to be Aquano? And I've been using Aquano as a stand-in, but the written guides aren't much better, and neither are the wikis. It won't be me, at least not by myself. I can't do a bunch of day 1 guides when the other remakes or eventually 3 years from now Dragon Quest 11 releases, and at this rate, even if I am trying to do my part, ultimately I don't have an answer.